Why it matters that you're keeping too much stuff in your head. When we talk about mental inventory or mental work in process, these are all the decisions and stuff, to do items that are inventory in between your ears. Now, why does it matter that we have too much? What's the impact to you? What's the impact to your effectiveness? So no matter how much, certain people can handle more than others, but almost all of us have more inventory than we should have to be most effective. Now, if we borrow some lessons from the lean world, Taiichi Ohno, the father of the Toyota production system, said about inventory, the more you have, the less likely you are to have what you need. Now, what he means by that is if you have an out of control system, you will have too much. And you also won't have the right stuff at the right place at the right time. The same thing applies to your mental work in process, your mental inventory. If you don't have good control over that system, you are less likely to have the right stuff at the right place at the right time. Flip that around, you'll often be thinking about the wrong stuff at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's where it starts to get to be a problem. So let's examine, as we talk about this, sort of the impact on you. And then we'll also talk about some strategies, some simple tactics that you can get better at managing your mental work in process. Talk about cognitive load and decision fatigue. There's something to start with, and I may pronounce this wrong, but it's the Zeigarnik effect. And this is in psychology, the effect where sort of unfinished tasks, interrupted tasks, unfinished decisions, create a strain on the body, a cognitive tension. And essentially that strain has a real impact on us as human beings. So again, different people are affected to different degrees, but without question, we're all affected to some degree or another. Now, if we think about other effects, partly we just don't look around and start to select the right decisions, the right tasks when we're already full. If your cup is full, if you filled up your cup, you don't start looking around for something new to put in your drink. You kind of are more worried and focused on the stuff already in that cup. But if we take that inventory down, if we take that load down, we can be more selective. We can look out on the horizon and be more thoughtful about what decisions and what mental whip we want to take on. So also there's sort of a psychological effect of all of this loading being a threat. It has an impact on us as individuals from a stress and strain standpoint. Those too many decisions that are sitting there, those decisions are asking to be made. And without it being made, our body's on alert, waiting for us to make that decision. And that can feel in our fight or flight as a threat on our stress hormones, our stress system. And lastly, when we're bouncing between them, when they're hanging on, when we're not seeing things through, we also reduce the quality of those decisions. We reduce the quality of our mental loading, our cognitive abilities, because part of our cognitive load is focused on all these other things that are already in your head instead of the task at hand. And that can really distract us from, even if we're trying to be focused, from really what we should be doing at any particular time. So that cognitive load and that decision fatigue starts to affect us, everything from a stress and strain standpoint, all the way to affecting the quality of our decision making and our mental cognitive work. Start with, from an impact of how this affects you, is this mental context switching. Essentially multitasking to a degree, at least on the cognitive side, is a myth. Yes, we can shower and think of things at the same time, but that doesn't require the same cognitive loading. But when we're talking about actually thinking about things and processing them, there's no such thing as multitasking. We are switching context back and forth. And of course, again, some people are better at that than others, but all of us experience a load and a loss when that happens. So consider sort of the 1 hour meeting dynamic as an example. So many people, and this actually got worse for a lot of people during the pandemic, we go from one meeting to the next with zero delay, with zero gap in our system. And so what happens is we're still processing the last meeting. So it actually begins at the very end where we are trying to make a decision with 5 minutes left because we know we're coming up on the time. And we don't have time to process that all fully. So even when the meeting ends, we made probably a decision. We may have done it poorly. We certainly haven't done it thoroughly and thoughtfully. And so there's an overhang. There's all the consequences of that start to carry forward out of that meeting. But the next meeting's already started. So we're still trying to process the previous meeting while we're trying to pay attention to the new one. So it's more than just whether we show up and, click on for our Teams meeting. It's what is our brain doing? What are we paying attention to? What are we even mentally prepared for? Do we even know clearly the purpose of that next meeting? For me personally, I try very, very hard to maintain, at least for my one-on-one work, a 15-minute meeting standard. That 10 minutes is most people think it's around, a restroom break, but it's much more about thinking about and processing what I just finished. Even, what do I want to let go of? What's in my mind? What notes can I capture? What to-do items can I make sure I put aside? And then just a few minutes, maybe even only 30 seconds, to orient myself towards what's next. So it doesn't take a ton of time, but it takes more than zero. And having 10 minutes really allows you to process everything that might be overhang from the previous meeting, get it out of your mind, out of your mental inventory, put it where it belongs, wherever in our systems of work that might be, and I'll come back to that point, and then also orient ourselves mentally for what comes next. Let's talk about some solutions. Now, a lot of these aren't going to be groundbreaking things. These aren't tactics that you haven't thought of before. But fundamentally, let's start with the simplest. Write it down. This is a tactic that's taught to us over and over again in almost any productivity system is get it out of your head and write it down. I don't know why we have to continue to relearn this lesson. All of us do. We always forget it. We always think, I've got to remember this. I've got to remember that. So we've got to find a way to write it down. Now, part of that is having capture systems, having a system to capture things that are in your head. Now, some of that might be systematic. In my Supernote, which is where I'm taking notes, I can now add a to-do item. I can star items. There's many different ways within that system that I can capture things that I need to pay attention to later. I don't have to remember them. If it's unrelated to what I'm doing, has nothing to do with the meeting. It just sort of pops in my mind all of a sudden, some context to what we're talking about. And I remember I have to go buy something or plan a meeting or book a hotel. I kind of have just some simple Post-its nearby to grab a pen, quickly write it down. And now I know I won't forget it because it's written down. And it took about a few seconds of distraction. It was absolutely distraction, but 3 seconds or a few seconds is much more than the next 15 minutes trying to hang on to that mental inventory. Now, also, sometimes we need a brain dump, right? Whether we're building a project, whether we're just, planning our week, get things planned, get things written down anywhere that might be. This even includes, I've got to make sure I leave on time. We'll put that in your calendar. I've got to make sure I follow up. We'll put that on your to-do list or your calendar. Start a draft email, even if it's just sitting there as an open email. Now it's started. You've dumped it out of your brain and gotten it into some systems of work. So make sure you have good capture systems and brain dump systems to make sure stuff's getting out of your mental inventory and to other places that you can rely on it being there. Now, another tool or tactic is essentially making small decisions very, very quickly. So there's sort of a basic 2-minute rule. If there's something if a task or a decision is not good, is going to take less than 2 minutes, just do it. Just get it done. Hey, I want to consider signing up for that webinar. Just do it. Look at it, read it. Yes or no. Boom, done. Now, if I'm paying hundreds of dollars for it and I need to rearrange my calendar, that might be a later decision. That might require more than 2 minutes. But fundamentally, a lot of these things don't require more than that time. So we're actually spending more energy hanging on to that inventory than it would take to process it. So any of those things, we want to be able to process them right away. Make small decisions and small tasks, get them done quickly, get them done as soon as you can. And then there's other things, the harder stuff that floats around with your in your head, a decision that you have to make. It hangs on, it lingers, you interact with it, you bounce against it multiple times. Fundamentally, this is where we want to use tools and processes to help us with those hard decisions. Now, they may not be easier, but just by writing them down anywhere, could be on a whiteboard, could be on a piece of paper, we start processing them. We start getting some of the clutter out of our head and onto a piece of paper, a whiteboard, or whatever it might be. And that helps us remove some of that clutter, some of that inventory surrounding that decision. The decision might still be there. We may not be quite ready for a conclusion. I'm going to come back to unfinished decisions. But the variables and the factors that affect that decision are no longer part of that inventory. The fact that it has to be made still is. Of course, we should put that on a to-do list. But the variables that our brain's been bouncing around on, those get out of our head, no longer inventory, or are now part of a process or a tool. I don't care if it's as simple as a pro-con list, but we get it down on some form of capture so it's no longer mental inventory. Let's come to unfinished decisions. Fundamentally, we have lots of these. It's everything from going to dinner, booking a trip, hiring somebody, making an investment. We have all sorts of unfinished decisions. They could even be career decisions. Do I want to go back to school or not? Do I want to move? Do I want to take this new job? Do I want to start a job search? All sorts of big decisions, small decisions are sitting unfinished in our mental inventory. They are truly work in process. They are decisions that we've begun at some level of framing, and we know are there, but we haven't finished them. We haven't brought them to conclusion. So the first thing we really should be asking is there learning that has to happen in order to make that decision? Is there new information that needs to be gained that I can just do a task and gain that information? Is there learning? Is there experimentation or skill or people I need to talk to? These are tasks that can be done. There may even be an experiment to go run. Let's just say you want to go back to school. Well, maybe take one course. And that's a pretty big experiment, but you learn a lot about whether, instead of sitting there for years saying, do I want to go back to school, not go back to school, take one course, see how it fits. That's an experiment that you can run to advance that decision instead of it hanging on as inventory. So really ask yourself, is there knowledge to be gained between where I am and that decision? And what is the action plan to get there? Now, in some cases, sort of the knowledge to be gained is just time-based. It's later, right? Oh, I need to check the weather before committing to X, Y, or Z. I have to see what else is going on. Well, rather than hanging on to, oh, I should get back to someone. Oh, I might need to buy those tickets. Calendar it, right? Whether it's on your to-do list or you put it in your calendar, get it out of your mental inventory. Say, I'm not ready to make this decision, but I will be in June. Great. Put it on your calendar in June and get it out of your mental inventory. Capture it, set a date. Now you've hit pause. Now you've sort of indefinitely removed it from your inventory. You've put it somewhere else. You can trust that system and know that information will be more relevant once that decision comes back up. And then lastly, we have to also avoid overthinking. This may be the hardest, I know it is for me, but there's a lot of decisions where we don't have more information to learn and we still haven't made a decision. Well, that's because we don't have the tools to actually make the decision. The knowledge to be gained to really sort out A or B might be in the future, past the decision point. Well, there's nothing I can do about that, right? I essentially have to make a decision and then learn what needs to be learned. Or the consequences might be really low, right? I have 2 restaurants. I've never been to either one. I'm going to learn afterwards. The worst thing I have is a bad meal. Now I've learned that I don't want to go back to that restaurant. So we tend to spend a lot of time carrying decisions where there's no new knowledge, there's no new action, but it just hangs on forever. And the reason is we can't cut to the chase. We can't get through it because we're overthinking it. We're fundamentally trying to impose some scheme, some information, some risks, some context on a decision that just doesn't belong there. And so those we have to get down to the simple task of what is this decision, what really matters, and then we'll find more often than not, we can make a decision. So our job in life is to reduce our mental inventory, our mental work in process. When we do that, we will experience less strain, less stress. We'll be more effective. We'll be more focused. And fundamentally, that's good for us and the people around us. So very few things can be more important that we can all do something about in our own work than managing our mental inventory. I hope these tactics and this framing helps you. I'd love to hear your strategies and how you approach it. Good luck.